Hey everyone, it's Lucy from My Crazy Craft Life, and I'm here today with the Flavor of the Month kit from Scrapping for Less. This is the April 2019, and the theme is Spring Critters, and it is just absolutely adorable. So those are the 6 cards that I made. 4 of them were from the sketches. Well, actually 5 was really from the sketches, and the 6th one was attempting to be from the sketch, but ended up not being. So I first just kind of go through and look. I have the banana split level, so I do have the extra stuff, and that includes a banner dive from Doris, sentiment stamp by Scrapping for Less, washi tape by Bo Bunny, and multi matte medium by Ranger. So you're going to get a whole bottle of that, the 0.5 ounces of it. So that's pretty cool. So first we're going to go with the first collection, and that includes Springtime Paper from Scrapping for Less, Just Because stamp set from Sunny Studios, Yellow Ribbon from American Crafts, Bumblebee stickers from Jolie's Boutique, and Sequin Mix by Scrapping for Less. So you see I did some masking with that. I cut it out on some masking tape. Actually, that's just Post-it tape, and just used 2 of them to do some masking to kind of make multiple beehives put together. I cut out a lot of this coloring because it's just a lot of repetitiveness with coloring the bees. And then I just show you the grays that I ended up using because I had pulled a couple more out than I actually ended up using. And then I'm going to show you the yellows that I use for the hives, and I end up going back and also using some grays with that to do the openings because it ended up just making more sense because it would be much darker inside of the openings for the bees. I did use my scan and cut to cut all of those little bees and the beehives out, so that worked really well. And then here I'm just figuring out what I'm going to do exactly with this card. Now for collection 1, I am using sketch number 2, and the measurements that I used on there were for the main piece with the beehives was 3.5 by 2 3/4. The sentiment strip was 2 inches by 1/2 inch, and the banner that's across all the way across the card is 2.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and then the banner that goes up and down is 1.5 inches by 4 1/4. Now you see there I use some Distress Oxides just to do some real simple coloring, or to give the paper just some coloring to make it kind of look like the sky, a grass, and the ground. And then one of the things I also did on here was I used that stamps to do like the little swirly things with the buzzing, but I also used some on the bottom, and I did not like how those turned out, so I ended up just putting some sequins over those. So once I pieced it all together, that was the first card. My second card, I am following sketch number 1, and this is collection number 2, and it's Journey of the Heart paper by Gina K Designs, Bird Stamp by Pink Fresh, Ephemeral from Pebbles, Friends stickers by Sticko, and Sequin Mix from Scrapping for Less. The measurements of the card for all of the different things, the banner that is going across the card is 3 3/4 long by 1/2 inch wide. The one that is going vertically is 3/4 inch wide and 3.5 inches long. Now I didn't use the square there. I had used the circle Hello Friend ephemeral that came with it, and that is what I used for that. Now those other strips that are kind of there on the top, these are all A2 size cards. So the strips that are on top of the card panel, that first front panel, that strip is 2 3/4, and then the one underneath it for the shadowing one is 3.5 inches wide. Now you kind of have to do it kind of cockeyed, I guess you want to say, to get it on that angle, and I just used the entire length of the 6-inch paper and kind of, like I said, made it cockeyed and put it on there and cut it that way. I did tape the strips together first just to make sure that they were going to be straight when I put it on there, and I wanted to make sure that they stayed that way. And then that very front panel is 4 inches by 5 1/4. So this was actually a really simple and quick card. I like to do those sometimes, just I guess to know that you don't have to spend 2 hours every time that you're going to sit down and make a card. I think the longest thing for me was to pick out the papers on exactly what I wanted, and the rest of it just kind of came together with following the sketch. So you see there, like I said, I was just trying to kind of angle them and make it make sense to me, and then I just used my scissors to cut off, and those are the same size as the panel itself, so it's the 5¼ inches long is what they would end up being. Now I was going back and forth deciding what exactly I wanted to put on there, and I thought in the end that that hello friend circle really went well. And at first I was looking at it because it is white with accents, and then the paper is off-white, but that first panel there that I have on the top, the one that is the 2 3/8 inches, that one actually has white in it, so that's why I thought it kind of worked well with this. Now I didn't do any coloring or anything with it, like I said, with that. In the end, I just ended up using some sequins to finish off this card. So for my next card, I used collection number 3 and sketch number 3. In the collection, you get Spring Fever paper from Scrapping for Less, Totally Terrific stamp set from Scrapping for Less, Wood Butterflies by Doris, Flowers, and then Sequin Mix from Scrapping for Less. So I had originally stamped these a bunch of times and I was just going to color them using some Copics, but then I decided to do some watercoloring. I have a Kiritaki, I believe that's how it's pronounced, watercolor set. I do not do a lot of watercoloring, but I do like to watercolor, but I think part of my problem is I have control issues, and you're supposed to put a lot of water on the paper and let the colors move, and I just have trouble doing that. But I do it a little bit more as I kind of get through this when I'm making the water around the body of water with the lily pad that is part of the stamp. I do like how a lot of this turned out, and I love how watercolors look when I see other people's. I don't know. I just can't do it, so I don't know what to say. I'm using the stitched oval die there, and that is a 2½ inch by 3 inch oval, and I'm just kind of setting it around because that's going to be the centerpiece, that center panel that the frog is going to sit on. I also use an action wobbler for the frog, and I kind of stick them on there. And then I do the stamp on there. Now, one of the things I did after I watercolored and I used my scan and cut to cut the images out, the scan and cut, it didn't cut off the antennas of all of them. One of them actually was perfect, but 2 of them were a little wonky looking, so I ended up just cutting it off and I drew it on some of mine. I did use a heat tool to dry my paper quicker because I was impatient and wanted to continue with this. But after I did the watercoloring and I set everything up, I decided I wanted to put some sparkle because it was dragonflies. And I will tell you that when you use alcohol things, such as the sparkle pen, the Spectrum Noir sparkle pen, on watercolors, they tend to move. You know, it kind of reactivates them and gets them moving again, which it turned out fine for this card, but, you know, just in case you didn't know, a little piece of advice. Because I really wasn't thinking about it. If I would have thought about it, I guess I would have known that, but I really wasn't thinking about it. And then when I did the sparkle on the water piece, you know, that panel on the very front, it actually moved some of the greens and the darker blues into the water. I think it ended up turning out well, and it looked really nice after I was done, but just to kind of give you a heads up. I also used glossy accents on the dragonflies afterwards, and then I used a couple of the sequins from the sequin pack to finish up that card. So that is that one. For the last collection, I ended up making 3 cards with this, mainly because the idea that I originally had wasn't working with the sketch, and how I made it wasn't working with the sketch, and so I kept making different ones until I finally made the last one. So in the 4th collection, you get Spring Papers by Scrapping for Less, Just Ducky stamp set from Scrapping for Less, Cloud Stickers by Sticko, Foil Tags by K & Company, and Sequin Mix by Scrapping for Less. So I start out just stamping the images, and then I had a thought on what I wanted to do as far as making kind of a panel with it already on there. Now those are the Copics that I used to do the coloring. And you'll see me going back and forth creating different things that end up on different cards. So I did use my scan and cut to cut these out after I was done, and I also ended up making some masks with some post-it note tape for these images as well, because on that panel I end up going back there and using some distress inks to make a background for it because I didn't like what I was doing and how it ended up working out. So for the first card that I ended up making with this kit was, like I said, it kind of bounces around. That I did not like how that panel was turning out, so I end up, like I said, this is where I get the distress inks. I end up using ice spruce. I used denim, or faded denim, broken china, and then the gray is actually just a distress ink, not a distress oxide, and that one is hickory smoke that I use for just the ground area that the image is sitting on. And then I just used a cloud stencil to make those clouds kind of dark and gloomy, because the stamp I was going to use, or I mean the sentiment that I use, not going to use, is don't let life's puddles get you down. So I wanted it to be a little like a cloudy day. But that wasn't working out with the sketch how I wanted it to, so I ended up making this first card. So the circle that I used for it, and I pretty much followed the sketch, is a 1-inch circle. The banners that have the sentiment on there are 3/4 inches the bottom one and a 1/2 inch is the top one. The very back panel is 4 5/16 by 2 3/4, and then the one that the duck is sitting on is 3/4 by 2 1/2. Now I finished up that one just by adding those cloud stickers to it. Then I went back to this panel, and again I was trying to make another card, and it just was not working out for me the way that I wanted it to. So I end up making a different one with one of the other images, and those measurements for the circle, it was a 1 1/2 inch circle, stitch circle die. It was 3/4 inch and a 1/2 inch for the banners that go all the way across by 4 1/4 that were layered on top of each other. I did end up putting a complete back panel on this because I ended up hanging the banners that I made with the die that came in the kit with the banana split level with some string, and I wanted to put that on the back of the panel. So I cut that out at 4 inches by 5 1/4, and then I just hung those banners there. And then the back panel that's on top of the front panel, I guess you want to say, the plaid one, is 4 inches by 2 1/2 inches, and then the one that the duck is sitting on is 3 1/4 inches by 2 1/2 inches. So now we get to this last one, and for this one I used a very simple, the very back panel is 4 7/8 by 3 1/2. The front one is 2 inches by 4 1/4 for the one that goes across, and then it's 2 3/4 inches by 4 1/8. So that is that final one. So I hope everybody enjoyed this. If you need to grab your kit, jump over to scrappingforless.com and make sure that you subscribe. And that is it for me today. So I hope everyone enjoyed this. Take care and have a great day.